All right, so you know that classic David and Goliath story?
Yeah.
The underdog taking on a giant?
Yeah.
Well, today we're going to look at something similar in the world of tech.
Oh, wow.
We're diving into the rise of Perplexity AI.
Okay, so this is the AI search engine, right?
That's it. And it's gotten a lot of attention recently, even some saying it could really shake things up for Google.
So for someone who's trying to keep up with the AI world like me,
Yeah.
the question is, how did this startup, focused on AI search, how did they get so big so fast that they could challenge a company worth literally trillions of dollars?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's one we're going to try to answer in this deep dive.
Awesome.
We've gone through tons of material reports, articles, interviews, you name it all, about Perplexity AI.
Okay.
Our goal is to extract the key insights into their strategy, what made them so successful so quickly.
I like it.
Now, we know you're busy and you want the information quickly, but you also want it thorough.
Huh.
So let's jump right in.
Let's do it.
So where do we start?
Well, the story seems to start with the founder, Arvind Srinivas.
Okay.
His background is super interesting, actually. He graduated from IIT Madras.
So a top engineering school.
Yeah, exactly. One of the best. And then in 2018, he became a research intern at OpenAI.
Wait, OpenAI. So that's like the birthplace of a lot of these big AI models we keep hearing about.
Oh, totally. ChatGPT, DALL-E, you name it. And then just a year later, in 2019, he goes to Google.
So he's been on both sides, right? The startup and the giant.
Exactly. And that experience really seems to have shaped his thinking. He's seen how things work at these big companies, seen the power of these new AI models, and probably also seen some of the limitations.
Okay, so we've got the background, the expertise. But what was the spark? What led him to start Perplexity AI?
Well, it seems like the launch of ChatGPT in December 2022 was a real turning point.
ChatGPT. I remember when that launched, blew everyone's minds.
Yeah, it was a game changer, but it also had some significant limitations, things Srinivas really picked up on.
Like what?
Well, the first big one was the knowledge cutoff date.
Right. So these models are trained on data only up to a certain point.
Right, so they can't really give you answers about anything that happened after that date.
So if you asked it about something that just happened yesterday, it would be clueless.
Exactly. Its knowledge is kind of frozen in time.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So real-time information, current events, that's a big gap.
And then the second limitation was the lack of source citations.
So it would give you an answer, but you wouldn't know where it got that information from.
Exactly. No way to check if it was reliable or if it was just making stuff up.
Which, in today's world where everyone's worried about misinformation,
Yes,
that's
sir.
a major drawback.
Definitely.
So it sounds like these two limitations, no real-time information and no source citations. That's what Perplexity AI really aimed to solve.
Yeah, that was the opportunity they saw.
Okay, so how do they approach it? What's their secret sauce?
Well, they call themselves an AI-powered conversational answer engine.
Now, that sounds kind of like a regular search engine. What's the difference?
It's subtle but important. They're not just giving you a list of links, they're giving you a direct answer.
Okay, so more like a chatbot. But what about those limitations we talked about, the real-time info and the sources?
That's the key difference. Perplexity AI always cites its sources.
Always.
Always. Every piece of information they give you, they tell you exactly where it came from.
That's huge, because it means you can actually verify the information check if it's reliable.
And it also means they're not making things up. They're only using information that's already publicly available on the web.
Okay, so they're transparent, and they're not trying to invent new facts.
Exactly.
But how do they actually do it? How do they give you these answers with sources?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting. Their strategy wasn't to build their own giant AI model like some of these other companies.
Which makes sense. Those things are incredibly expensive to develop.
Right, and time-consuming. Instead, they did something much more clever. They integrated existing AI models from other companies with their own search engine technology.
So they're not trying to build the biggest brain. They're more like a conductor orchestrating the best instruments.
Exactly, a great analogy.
So let's say I ask for today's news on AI.
Right.
Now, if I asked ChatGPT, that it probably wouldn't have a clue.
Probably not. Its data would be out of date.
But Perplexity AI, what would it do?
Okay, so first it would take your question and run it through its search engine.
So it's searching the web for the latest information.
Right. Finding news articles, blog posts, anything relevant.
Okay, and then
Then it takes all that fresh information and feeds it to one of these integrated AI models.
Dimway AI model.
It analyzes all that data, extracts the key facts, and then gives you a concise answer.
And this
It
answers.
includes links back to the original sources where it found that information.
So you get the best of both worlds. You get a direct answer like a chatbot, but you also get the transparency and reliability of a search engine. That's
Exactly.
really smart. It's like they closed the loop on those limitations.
And that approach gave them some really significant advantages.
Yeah, what
Well, first, it allowed them to leverage the AI arms race.
the AI arms race. So all these companies spending billions to develop bigger and better AI models.
Exactly. Companies like DeepMind, OpenAI, they're constantly pushing the boundaries with models like Gemini and GPT.
And Perplexity AI, they get to benefit from all that progress without having to spend billions themselves.
Exactly. They're using the best tools available without having to build them from scratch.
That's a really smart strategy. It's like you said earlier about not needing to own every part of the value chain.
Exactly. And the second advantage is flexibility and choice.
Flexibility in what way?
Well, different AI models are good at different things. Some are great at reasoning, some are better at writing.
Right.
And Perplexity AI lets you choose which model you want to use depending on your needs.
So if I'm doing some serious research, I might choose a model that's really good at logic.
Right.
But if I'm just trying to brainstorm ideas, I might choose a more creative model.
Exactly. It gives you a lot more control over the results.
That's really cool. I like that.
And the third big advantage, and this is something that's getting a lot of attention, is that they're avoiding some of the legal and ethical issues that other companies are facing.
Yeah, those lawsuits about copyright and bias in these big AI models.
Exactly. So, because Perplexity isn't training its own models on all this potentially copyrighted data, they're not as exposed to those legal risks.
And if one model gets into trouble, they can just switch to another one.
Right. They're not tied to any one specific AI.
That's a huge advantage in such a fast-moving field.
Totally. And all of these advantages combined really help them grow incredibly fast.
Yeah, speaking of growth, their valuation milestones in 2024 were mind-blowing.
They were incredible. So in January 2024, they got a big investment from NVIDIA, and that pushed their valuation to $520 million.
That's a lot of money, especially for a company that's only been around for a short time.
And then by April of that year, their valuation had already doubled to $1 billion.
$1 billion, that's unicorn territory.
Exactly. And then it just kept going up. In June 2024, SoftBank invested, and their valuation tripled to $3 billion.
$3 billion, that's insane.
And by the end of the year, December 2024, they were valued at $9 billion.
$9 billion in 1 year.
177 times growth in just 12 months. It was the fastest growing AI startup by far.
I mean, that's just unheard of. So with that kind of growth, the question everyone's asking is, can they actually challenge Google?
Yeah, that's the big
I
question.
mean, Google has, what, 90% of the search market right now?
Something like that. Yeah, it's a massive giant.
Plus, Google has so much money, they pay Apple like $20 billion a year just to be the default search engine on iPhones.
That's a lot of money.
It's a huge advantage.
Yeah.
So why didn't Google or even OpenAI just copy Perplexity's approach?
Right. It seems so obvious now.
So why didn't they?
Well, it seems like there are a couple of reasons. First, companies like Google and OpenAI, they've built their reputation on their own technology, their own AI models, their own search engines.
So OpenAI sells access to its AI through APIs, right?
Yeah, exactly. So other companies can pay to use their models in their own products.
So they need to show off their own models, make them the star of the show.
Right. It's part of their business model.
Makes sense. What's the other reason?
Well, it also just takes time to develop and improve these giant AI models and then integrate them with a massive search infrastructure.
So if a new model comes out like DeepSeek or Mistral AI,
Yeah.
Google has to figure out how to incorporate it into their own systems, which is a huge undertaking.
Exactly. It's a much slower process.
But Perplexity AI, they can just plug and play, right?
Exactly. They're not tied to any one specific AI, so they can be much more agile.
So it's their positioning as an AI search engine, not just a chatbot, that gives them that flexibility.
Exactly. They're focused on providing the best search experience regardless of which AI model they use.
That's really clever. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. What are the key takeaways here for our listeners?
Well, first, I think it shows that even a small company can compete with a giant if they understand the giant's weaknesses.
Right, Perplexity AI. They saw that gap in the market, the need for real-time information and reliable sources, and they went for it.
Exactly. And second, I think it highlights the importance of focusing on the user's needs.
Right, what do people really want from a search engine? Accurate information that they can trust.
Exactly. And Perplexity AI really nailed that.
Okay, so final thought for our listeners. Something to ponder.
So we've seen how Perplexity AI challenged the status quo and search what other industries or systems might have similar weaknesses or unmet needs.
Right, places where the big players are maybe a little too comfortable.
Exactly. Those are the places where innovation can really happen.
And where you might just find the next David taking on Goliath.
Absolutely.
Some food for thought, for sure.
Definitely.
Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into Perplexity AI. It's been a fascinating journey.
Oh, it really has. Thanks for having me.
And to all our listeners out there, keep those questions coming, and we'll keep digging into the stories that matter.
See you next time.